Welcome to Debugging Medicine. Today's episode is for all of the incoming medical students wondering what it actually takes to succeed in medical school. I'm interviewing Dr. Viraj Shah. He went to the University of Miami for medical school and is now an ENT resident at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. He is genuinely one of the brightest people I know, super passionate about medicine, and has a ton of advice that I know will be incredibly valuable to hear. He is also my older brother, so hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Welcome, Raj. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Aish? Happy to be here.
Good, man. Thank you for doing this. So we just had some questions about, how to excel and succeed throughout medical school, and wanted to know your perspective and just, what you have to say about the journey.
Yeah, I think this is a very timely podcast given the fact that, you're about to start your journey through medical school. And so I think that there couldn't be a better time to discuss this topic.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's just get started. So when you get into, medical school, I'm sure it's a massive change from, anything you've done previously. So what was that biggest shock to you? What caught you kind of off guard when you first started?
Yeah, I think all of us that end up getting into medical school and starting medical school have, for the most part, excelled academically throughout your secondary school and undergraduate education. And so, you come in with usually a decent amount of momentum there, and you feel like you're able to study, you're able to test well. And I think the biggest shock for me was just like the overall amount of information that you are expected to synthesize and remember in a very short periods of time. I think I remember one of my mentors or one of my friends that was already in medical school telling me before I started that it's like almost like learning the amount of information that's on your AP bio exam in high school every 2 weeks. And so I think that just that sheer amount of information can be overwhelming. And I think that's something that really shocked me to begin.
So did you have to spend significantly more time? Would you say traditionally you would maybe study for a couple hours a day previously? And how was that shift from, going from maybe studying 2-3 hours a day to studying a lot more than that?
Yeah, I think medical school is a full time career in that sense, and it is different from the undergrad mindset in that you really do need to be dedicating essentially like a 9 to 5 type of time frame towards your education and towards your studying, and like maybe you won't have classes throughout the entire period or lectures, but you can have a few hours of lectures every day, and then it behooves you to really sit down and synthesize that information and stay on top of it as it's coming to you, rather than waiting till the weekend before the Monday exam to start to learn and synthesize everything.
That makes sense. And so, did you have to go into your classes that first year, or was it optional? And how did you sort of, balance
Yeah,
that?
I went to the University of Miami for medical school, and there we did not have mandatory lectures for the most part. Everything was recorded, and so initially I tried to go to lecture and be in person. I think that motivated me to like just get up early and be in the zone. And then as time progressed, I transitioned to more reviewing these lectures as they were uploaded online, and I learned that I could speed up the lectures, listen to them on 1.5 or 2 speed, and I felt like a lot of times that would save me time and make me more efficient in terms of my studying.
No, that makes sense for sure. And then, so I'm sure everyone around you was incredibly smart when you first started. Everyone had a background similar to yours. So how did you get past that kind of feeling where, everyone else is smarter than you or just as smart as you? How'd you deal with that?
Yeah, you're really in a class full of individuals who have always been at the top of whatever cohort they've been a part of. They're most of them are top of their classes in high school and also top of their classes in undergrad. And so now you have 150 students or 200 students who are all just the cream of the crop. And so I think that can definitely be overwhelming. And the other caveat that I didn't think about too much and I kind of put together as time went on was that medical school is different in that you really everyone starts on the same playing field, same level, because all this information really hasn't been presented to you at all throughout undergrad or in your secondary education, and it's all brand new, and so everyone starts at the same playing field. And I remember, thinking, in undergrad, hey, I'm in physics class, but I had done AP physics in high school. So a lot of the stuff was being presented to me for a second time. And it just came to me a little bit easier because I'd already synthesized some of this information, learned to deal with it. And whereas in medical school, I was learning things for the first time. And so I didn't have that advantage, so to speak. And I think that's something that, really kind of rattled me a little bit initially.
That makes sense. And so, in aside from the competitive, spirit as well, when you see other classmates, what was the most the positive thing about that kind of environment? Like, what did you find enriched you from being in that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, you're surrounded by excellence from the very beginning. Every single person is motivated, every single person is regimented, every single person is disciplined. And I think just being surrounded by that type of environment really motivates you. I think the biggest thing is to not let it bog you down, because you also come from that type of background and you have also learned to excel in your academics. And so the biggest thing that I recommend is just stick to what worked for you. You don't have to completely blow everything up and change your complete strategy, and stick to your guts when you're continuing down this path. And use your friends and peers to just motivate you, learn from them, but don't fall into the comparison game.
For sure. So how did you find that group of friends that that you could study with and learn from each other? How'd you sort of find that?
Yeah, I think the first few weeks of medical school are really that kind of time period where everyone's trying to interact, everyone's trying to make friends and meet new people. And so I would just recommend have a very open mind, speak to as many of your classmates as you can, go to as many social events as you can just to get to know everyone. And then you're going to start to see enclaves develop where, hey, maybe you see the same few faces every time you go to lecture because all of you guys like going to in-person lecture. I mean, that could be now your friend group where you all have a similar type of study strategy, or you like to be in the library and watching lectures and you see the same few people there, or you're at the gym working out, you see the same few people there. And I think you'll slowly start to gravitate towards the people that have your type of mindset when it comes to medical school, because everyone's different and that's totally fine. There's no one strategy that works for everyone, but I think it's important to surround yourself with people who share your strategy and your method for going about things, because then you can create a supportive group throughout medical school.
Definitely. And that makes a ton of sense for finding your own, classmates. But what about finding people in upper class, finding upperclassmen to kind of mentor you and help you in that sense?
Yeah, and I think that is extremely important. I can't underscore that enough. I think I was able to meet upperclassmen. Usually at the beginning of medical school, there will be some sort of social events where, the upperclassmen are inviting the new medical students to events. That's a great way to meet people. Another way is joining any sort of clubs or extracurricular activities, because you'll usually have upperclassmen in these environments too. And I think that that's the best way to find people that kind of share your type of mindset, and then you can really use them as an asset and resource throughout medical school.
So what was maybe one advice that upperclassmen gave you that really helped you that initial year?
Yeah, I think they're really good at just giving you perspective. I think one of the things that when I started, we started off in an 8-week anatomy boot camp essentially, and it was one of the, I mean, it was described as one of the toughest courses in your preclinical timeline. And I remember just speaking to some of the upperclassmen, and they're like, for these first 2 months, just forget about everything else, buckle down, and really immerse yourself in this course and figuring out what strategies work for you to learn and to excel in this type of environment. And I think just hearing from them like what to focus on, how I should be managing my time, I think really helped create that mindset and then helped me know that I was using my time effectively during that period.
That makes sense. So what was one study habit you kind of had to abandon during that switch, and what did you replace it with?
Yeah, I used to be the type of guy that liked to open up the PowerPoint slides and then write down essentially notes from those slides. In undergrad, it tended to work for me because it helped me memorize a lot of the information. But then I tried that the first few weeks of medical school and just realized that I was just wasting so much time, and there's just too many slides to get through, and I wasn't retaining anything, and it was just not the most effective use of my time. And so after that, I transitioned to using OneNote, where I would import the slide deck, and then as I listened to the lecture, I would write my notes on the side. I just typed them out. Typing is obviously quicker than writing. And then after that, I used a combination of flashcards via Anki, etc., to kind of help ingrain these things into my memory. Yeah.
So what would you say about people that get the iPad Pros? Like, do you recommend something like that over a traditional laptop?
Yeah, I never used the iPad with the pen, but a lot of my classmates did, and I think it's a great way for if you like to be a handwriting type of person. I think it's a great way to keep track of all your notes in one compact type of device rather than having a bunch of random loose sheets running around. And then those notes you can then carry with you into the future, and you don't really have to get rid of them, and they're very easily accessible. So I think an iPad in this day and age is definitely something that could be a very useful resource.
Makes sense. And how'd you kind of do your Anki, keep up with it? What was, if you could just highlight that a little bit?
Yeah, I think every course was a little different because every course, had different amounts of free time that you had to engage in studying. But I think the biggest thing was I had set certain goals for myself, like how many new flashcards I wanted to do per day, and then as well as like how many review cards I wanted to do per day. And I did as much that was feasible and where I felt like I was engaging and my mental capacity was still fresh. I didn't bog myself down with, hey, I have to finish these 1,000 flashcards today, and just bog myself down into the late hours of the night just to finish things. I think the biggest thing is you need to realize at what point you have diminishing returns and where you're not getting the value for your time.
No, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So I think we can move on more onto the, all the other parts of medical school, the non-academic side. And it's increasingly competitive to sort of match into these specialties like yours, ENT. So there's just a ton of pressure now to start doing research, networking, all these things day one. Looking back, what advice would you give an M1 that is kind of worrying about how they stand and when to start all of these things?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I'd give you is just take the first 6 months, 3 to 6 months to really just gain your footing and develop your study strategies and show yourself that you can excel in this academic environment, you can synthesize this information, and you can do well on your exams. I think because that is the biggest foundation for medical school. It doesn't matter how much research you do if you can't, pass your exams and your board exams. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would say. Initially, there are going to be a lot of opportunities that arise to join extracurricular activities, whether it's student government or volunteering activities. At the University of Miami, we had the DOCS program, which was this outreach health clinic volunteering organization where we set up healthcare camps throughout South Florida, and they put out applications for first year liaisons. And I think like these opportunities, they don't come to you that often. So I think it is important to try to engage and maybe apply to these when they come, but don't bog yourself down if you don't get them, or don't over apply and don't overcommit, especially in the first few months.
So, how did you deal with, an opportunity that you really, really wanted? You applied, maybe didn't get in. How would you deal with these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it may seem like the end of the world, especially initially when these like fewer coveted options are floating around and you don't get them, and you feel
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like now my in is like I don't have that in into this organization, and it's just I'm kind of boxed out of it. But I think that's just not true. There's so many ways to excel in medical school. Even if you're not in student government, you'll find another organization to lead and direct. And if you don't find any extracurricular that you can, become a part of in terms of leadership, you'll find some research opportunity where you can build that growth and excel.
Yeah.
So I think just recognizing that there's ample opportunities, they're going to arise throughout your 4 years, and that first few months of medical school are not what is end up going to happen in the future. And so I think just having that type of mindset and seeing that big picture is really important.
So, I guess that kind of goes for the extracurriculars, research, and things. What about something like shadowing?
Shadowing also, I think, you know, the earlier you shadow, the better, in the sense that you can give yourself more time to try to find what specialty is right for you. But I do think, once again, same aspect here is that you should definitely just try to focus on building your regimented schedule in the first few months, and making sure that that's all solidified before going out and shadowing, because shadowing can be a big time sink. You're committing to half a day or a full day in the OR or clinic, and that's a day that you're not studying. And so that's something to think about. And I basically started looking into specialties after the first 6 months after I started.
Okay. And since we have some time, if you want to go over how you would choose one opportunity from another, one mentor from another, what was your thought process in choosing, one or the other?
Yeah, yeah, I think the biggest thing in medical school is really figure out what the role is before committing, and making sure that you truly are passionate about something and you are going to get some sort of value from it, before you say yes. And I've have a tough time saying no a lot of times, and so for me this was definitely a challenge. But there's a few times where I had committed and had to back out, and
Yeah.
that's something, especially in medicine and even in any field, where that's kind of looked down upon, especially if you're not able to deliver on a commitment that you've said yes to. And so I think if no one's going to fault you for asking more questions, no one's going to fault you for getting more information. And I think it's a big deal to just ask your upperclassman that's in that position or in one spot above and be like, hey, like this is something coming into my plate. Do you feel like it's worth my time? How have you managed your time? And they're going to give you honest answers. And so I think that that's something that I would do.
For sure. And how would you say your mentors have kind of, set you up for success? Like, what are some things they kind of pushed you for? Um, you know,
Yeah. I credit my mentors for essentially helping me match into my residency program. I think that they played a indescribable role in my development and getting me to where I am today. I think the biggest thing is you just want to find someone who is not overspread. A lot of times there are some very great faculty that are very productive if you're looking at the research aspect of things, and they may have almost 10, 15, 20 medical students working with them, and at that point, how much time can they dedicate to you? I mean, some faculty are very good at allocating time, and while others struggle with it. And so I think these are the types of little nuanced things that you should definitely look for. And you're not going to find, it's okay if you commit to someone and you work with them and you realize that, hey, maybe they're not the best mentor for me. And that's totally fine. That's why you have 4 years of medical school. You have a lot of time to meet new people and experiment with finding the right mentor for you.
Okay. And so, what do you suggest to someone? I know I've talked to a lot of incoming medical students. A lot of them seem, hyper committed to a certain specialty. What kind of advice do you have for, you know, those type of people? And myself included, because I feel that, naturally you want to be sure about what kind of path you want to go to. And so, like, just what advice do you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, this could be a whole topic on its own, and we can definitely go into it further. But I think the biggest thing is I would say have an open mind, because medicine is such a broad field. There's so many specialties. There's specialties within specialties, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who end up going into these niche specialties because they first chose one thing, and then that brought them to the next thing, and then brought them to the next thing. They probably didn't know when they were a medical student that they wanted to be a pediatric cardiac surgeon. Like that's something that's very niche, and you only get to after jumping a bunch of hoops. But I think have an open mind initially, shadow as much as you can, and shadow in different environments as much as you can, and then see what you value in terms of your future career. And I think if you do those things, then you'll eventually reach that specialty that is right for you.
That makes sense.
If from the beginning you're super committed and you know 100% that you want to do something, then I wouldn't fault you for jumping in, especially if it's a more competitive specialty. But sometimes what you think is the right thing for you and what's the best on paper, it may not be. And so just really make sure that you've spent that time shadowing and imagining yourself in that role in the future before committing.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So we can move on further. Medical school is, again, a massive change. Just what were some of your non-negotiables, with this basically, your whole life changing, so much more work, so much more things to worry about. How did you manage your relationships or just your hobbies and, just having that sort of excitement and fun in your 20s as well?
Yeah, I think non-negotiables for me were definitely making sure I still continue to interact with my friends and family. I was lucky enough to have my wife, now wife, also be part of with me in my class throughout medical school, and so that was very special. And we tried to definitely decompress in ways where we weren't just focusing on our medical education, and I also like to stay very active, so I play a lot of tennis, basketball, workout, and so those were the things that I definitely set aside time for. Even if it was, I knew an exam was coming up, I still made sure that, hey, at a certain time, I would put my books away and just head on over to the gym and do something that was kind of taking my mind off of things. And I think that it's really important to have those hobbies and those things that kind of give you joy outside of medicine to keep you grounded and not let everything bog you down.
I'm sure there were some weeks where you didn't have time to even do some of your non-negotiables. How would you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be weeks where you have to just hunker down and kind of suck it up, depending on how you feel and how you've managed your time. And
Yeah.
I think that you don't feel great doing that, but it just depends on how much you want it, right? And so if you want to succeed, you want to excel in whatever class that you're in or whatever you're shooting for, then you have to make certain sacrifices. But I'd always try to decompress at each hurdle that I was able to cross, and I think that that's important. Like essentially making sure on vacations or holidays, etc., that you have things lined up for yourself that you're looking forward to and are going to be there waiting for you after you cross certain barriers.
So there might be two types of maybe people, right? So there might be the people that kind kind of do the 10,000-mile approach where they do the same amount of work every single day, whether their schedule is busy or it's free. There might be the type of people that, when it's super free, they might just bool out, do whatever they want for that week. But then when it's exam week, they're locked down and just fully into that. So what do you have to say about, those two approaches and what kind of worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, in undergrad, I was definitely the type of person that would, have a good time and relax most of the week or weeks until that exam was rolling around the corner, where you'd kind of hunker down for the few days and then take your exam. And that worked well for me throughout undergrad. I will say that medical school, that gets harder. And I do think that, especially in medicine, with it being truly is lifelong learning. And as you get older, as you go up the ranks and into the next stages for your training, the responsibilities increase and there's less dedicated time to study. And so I think if you build habits of doing a little bit every day, that's going to transition much better to your future career. And so I think that's something that I definitely learned throughout medical school. It wasn't like on day one I started making sure that I was doing this every single day, but as time progressed, that is what I transitioned towards. And so I think the earlier you can do that, the earlier you can be disciplined in your study habits and your productivity time, I think that the better you'll be in the long run.
That makes sense. And then how would you say just like managing distractions? I mean, a lot of people are going to move to exciting cities, I'm sure. I mean, you were already in Miami because you did your undergrad there, but a lot of people might be going to exciting cities like New York, Boston, Miami, etc. How do you manage those distractions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely tough. Like, there'd be so many days, weekends, Saturday, Sundays, where it's beautiful outside in Miami. The sun is shining, everyone's out and about, and you're in your apartment lounge, just hunkered down with your hoodie on, studying, and it's extremely depressing. But I think just recognize why you're in that city, recognize why you're in medical school. It's a means to an end, and you gotta have your priorities straight. And I think that like I said, it takes sacrifice. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. And so I think that as soon as you get that into your mindset, then the earlier the better. Especially, I think, yeah, that's what I would say.
No, for sure. And then, so having been through medical school, all the sacrifices, residency, more sacrifices, and like now you're in kind of like that last stretch, right? You're about to finish residency. How would you say everything was sort of worth it to you? Like, how was that journey? Do you feel fulfilled? I just want to know, like, your thought process.
Yeah, I think, long story short, would I do it again? Yes, 100%. I think that this field is truly unlike any other field, any other profession available. Your every day is a day where you are in the service of others. I think not many jobs can say that, really. And you are able to constantly engage in learning. I think that some of the faculty. I think I look towards mentors in my career and in my workplace, and I see some of my program director. He's in his 70s, early 70s, and still every day he comes with the same tenacity, same dedication, same work ethic that he's probably been doing since he was in his 20s, and he's not burnt out. And I think that comes from being in a field where you are getting that type of motivation, you are helping others, and you're getting that satisfaction from your work. And so I think that it's a long road, but if you find the field and you find the niche that is right for you, it's definitely worthwhile.
That makes sense. Yeah, I might have to have you on again to talk more about, specialties and just what sort of lifestyle is best for a given individual. But if you had to go back, M1 starts again, what advice would it be that you give yourself?
Yeah, I think I would just say I think I've harped on this a few times, but I think one, I just give myself just say that it's a long journey. You can't really see the end of the road as an M1, and
Yeah.
I think just divide your timeline into stages and just focus on that stage and don't bog yourself down with this whole future track and X amount of years of training, etc. Because I think that can be really kind of suppressive. So focus on what's at hand, clear each hurdle, and do the best that you can do in each stage, and then
Yeah.
your results will, they'll speak for themselves.
And I'm sure it's super hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel day one of M1. So when did you start kind of seeing that in your medical school journey?
Yeah, I think like you don't really see it until you match, to be honest, because that is the ultimate decision day there. But I think making it past my preclinical years, taking step one, like that's a big
Yeah.
transition point. And then getting through your clinical rotations, taking step two, I think that's another really big transition point. And then finally submitting that application and going on interviews, seeing your colleagues from around the world, I mean, around the country and world at times. I think those are the stages that are, monumental throughout this path.
For sure. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I think this was super, super helpful, and I hope everyone that's listening had a great time. I just want to say thank you so much for your time and hope to have you back on again.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to chatting in the future.